Okay, you want to know how to use your live wells. Let's say you've never fished and put fish in a live well, or you've only been doing it for a short period of time and you want to know more, or you've been doing it for many years and you say, I want to see what this dude has to say. So I've been fishing bass tournaments for well over 20 years, close to 25 years. And in that time, I've seen a lot of different live wells, seen a lot of different things, and I've developed my own system of how I like to take care of my fish. So I'm gonna give you how to use your live wells and how to take care of your fish while you're on the water. This is the basics version. We're not gonna talk about fizzing. We're not gonna talk about deep water fish. We're just gonna talk about normal fishing conditions. Right here, I've got a Bass Cat Eyra bass boat. I love the live wells in my Bass Cat. Other manufacturers, boat manufacturers, make some pretty decent live wells, but I will put the Bass Cat up against any of them. I'm not here to tell you about that. I'm going to tell you how to use them. That is the most important part of it. So you catch that fish, you catch that bass, and then you're going to put him into the live well. I do not like putting fish into a dry live well. Step one. So I'm going to hold that fish in my hand until I go down here to the switch over here, and when you're running and not using your live wells, it's going to go onto empty. I'm going to switch that over to auto. Other manufacturers have different names on those, but what happens is there's a flap in the back that opens up, and it's going to stay empty and basically let your live wells drain when you're not using them. And then when you turn that to auto, or someone might have fill or whatnot, it closes that flap so that when you pump fresh water in there, that the live wells will fill up. And then I'm gonna go over here to our the A1 touchpad on the Bass Cat. It's right over here, as you can see. I'm gonna push what is called aerator. That pumps water in from the outside, manual. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the recirculate on 5 minutes. That's the increments. The closer you are to the manual, the more frequent it is. I'm gonna just go ahead and do 5 minutes right there. I'm gonna leave it on manual until it fills up. When I catch that first fish, I'm gonna sit here and push pump in right there. And so that's gonna be an additional pump. So I'm gonna be pumping two pumps into that live well. As you can see, it's filling up really quickly. Take a gander in there. So now that I've got some water in there, and more than just a couple inches, I'm gonna go ahead and put that fish in there. And then I'm gonna wait for a second, let that water fill up about halfway or so. I'm gonna let that water, and then I'll turn off the extra pump in, because if you leave that extra pump in on, it's gonna totally overflow. I'm gonna leave that pump on, and then I'm gonna turn my aerator, which is the outside water coming in, and I'm gonna turn the recirculator. I'm gonna turn that on to timed until I get more fish in the live well. One fish in these big live wells, I don't care what the water temperature is, it's gonna last, there's gonna be a lot of oxygen in there. Plus, you can look down in there before it fills up too much, and you can see that little deal down there called the Oxygenator. That is from a TH Marine, and what that does is when you turn it on, it creates a current that puts additional oxygen into the water. I just go ahead and put 2 of them in there. I figure if one's good, 2's even better. Just gonna increase your oxygen in the water. And so when your fish are in your live wells, there's 2 things that hurt them: low oxygen and high ammonia content. Now, what is ammonia? It's pee. It's bass pee. That's what that is. When they get stressed out, they have a lot of pee. They pee in the water a lot, especially when the water's warm. That can hurt them. So if the ammonia levels get too high in the live wells, that can hurt the fish. So you want to make sure that you continually pump in fresh water from the outside. That's why I like to keep that one on. Keep that fresh water coming in from the outside, and you keep that recirculation going so that the ammonia levels don't get too high and the oxygen levels stay plenty high. And it all comes back to one saying for me, in that lake water has never killed a bass. If that bass was living out here in the lake or river, it's not gonna, that water right out there is not gonna kill that fish. As long as there's plenty of fresh water on that fish, it's not gonna hurt that fish. A lot of people like to put all kind of crazy chemicals in on their fish. There's not a huge need to do too much. if the fish is stressed or if he's been cut or anything. I really like putting the G juice, as you can see, right under my seat, right under my life jacket, right in here. I always keep the bottle of G juice. That's the Livewell formula I like to use. And all you got to do is take off this top and fill this portion up, and that's usually enough for one Livewell. The blue dye is in there to make so you can see when it gets diluted. That's really what that dye is in there for. It does not hurt the fish in any way, shape, or form. You can put that dye in there, and then once the lake water gets pumped in there over time, you can put a little more G juice in there to make sure that they stay nice and recovered, and you get what you need on your fish. So now you're going to put more fish in there. So you catch 2, 3, 4, 5 fish. Maybe you're fishing a team tournament or a partner tournament. You got 5 over here and you got 5 here. That's a lot of fish, even in these really, really big Livewells. So you want to make sure that you know, if you start to get where you think you have a lot of fish in there, go ahead and put your Livewells on manual. Manual on the recirc and manual on the aerator to where it's pumping in the new water. You can never put too much fresh water and too much recirculation on them. It's really easy to not put enough. So that's a big deal right there. And then you may be looking and saying, why are these Livewells are a triangular shape that maximizes the space in this particular boat. But I love the triangular shape because if you've ever carried water in an open cooler that's squared, you can see that, that water sloshes back and forth, and it sloshes, and then it just starts sloshing out. The same thing happens in this Livewell when you're running in the rougher water. It will slosh back and forth, but that triangular shape, what happens is it'll slosh against that flat side, and then it will fold over on itself. So the water stays a lot more stable in these Livewells than they do in rectangular Livewells, in my opinion. I have actually driven down the lake in rough water, opened them up, and just looked to see what happens in there, and it's surprisingly stable of water conditions. It doesn't slosh back and forth real hard, so that's a big deal. But again, the basics are lake water's never killed a bass. Continually put more water in on those fish. That is a big deal. I see a lot of people, they fill their Livewells up and then they turn them off, and then all they do is recirculate that same water. That water gets stale, it gets stinky, a lot of PP in there. It gets to where it gets toxic for the fish to be in. So putting new water in on those fish, I think, is very, very important. So like I said, I'm not going to talk anything about fizzing fish, deep water fish, any of that kind of stuff. That is just the basics for how you handle your fish. And remember, folks, fish are cold-blooded creatures. Their metabolism is tied in to the environment that they're in. If you catch fish out of 30 or 40 degree water, really cold water, you could take and put those fish right here on the deck of the boat and leave them for a couple hours. Their metabolism is so slow, they'll be just fine. They need minimal oxygen, minimal food, all that kind of stuff, because their whole body is just slowed down so much. As the water temperature rises, you get up into the 60s, they really get more active. They require a little more oxygen. The water gets in the 70s and 80s, even more. When that water temperature gets into the 80s and 90s, that is the danger zone. You have to really be careful with the fish that you put in your Livewell. You have to make sure that you continually put more fresh water in on them and recirculate 100% of the time. Keep those oxygenators going 24/7. As soon as you fill them up, I always turn those oxygenators on, no matter what the water temperature is, just because they pull almost no current, yet they add oxygen to the Livewell. So hopefully that combination of things can help you get started on treating fish the right way when you're putting them in a Livewell, no matter what kind of tournament you're in, or if you're just out there fun fishing and you want to throw a couple in the Livewell to take pictures of later, which we all love to do. Obviously, take pictures and tell everybody what a great time we had on the water and the success and show everybody the success you had on there, whether you're in a tournament or just out there having fun. So hopefully this helped you out in treating your fish right in these Livewells.